So today I'm going to be talking about everybody's favorite creative insight platform, Motion. Yay. I know obviously we've been working in Motion, but I think there's just so many opportunities. So I want to make sure everybody is aware of how to use Motion, what all the capabilities are, and also welcome to like a conversation about like things maybe you found in Motion that I didn't even see yet. So just want to get us kind of starting running on that. So first things first, back to basics. What does Motion integrate with? Which channels does it work with? I think right now, pretty much for every client we are working with, we are having, meta insights on there, but I want to make sure everybody's aware that it also does TikTok insights. I think most of those are integrated, but we also have YouTube and LinkedIn. I think Design Spec was one of the only ones that we were working on LinkedIn with, but if we have anybody jump over into that, definitely want to make sure every platform that we are able to integrate with, we are integrated. So we are using the full motion of Motion. And definitely I will talk to them because obviously we would love to have, Stack Adapt, Pinterest as options here. So I will connect with their team to see, are those things in the work? They're constantly working on improving the app. So they really appreciate recommendations on like what people would like to see. So if you have any other platforms that you'd like us to, ask them if they can get integrated, I am super happy to pass that along. And then I also want to show you, because I've gotten this question a couple times, and I know this is like really an internal learning situation, but like, how do we add a workspace? How do we add a new channel? So I'm just going to show you right now. So if you go over into account settings, this is where you should be able to, actually, one second. Where do we add? Yeah, so workspace settings. No. One second, guys. Create workspace. That's where we would create a new workspace. So if we have a new client, just shoot me a message if you're adding a new client. I think we're okay with like our number of available clients, but just so I know how many we've got going on. But you would literally just like type in new client, connect Meta, connect TikTok, etc. If you have a current client who's adding a new platform, you would just come into account settings, or you can go up there to workspace settings. And you would come over here to data sources, and this is where you can connect it. So like, let's say Marco got a TikTok, it will automatically, like it's already connected to our TikTok. So it'll pull up all of our advertisers and you can just connect it there. And it takes like maybe a couple of minutes. So very, very efficient. And of course I'm always happy to help, but I'm like, if I can make you guys a little more independent so you can do that without having to wait on me, that's how you do it. So what creative performance insights can Motion help identify? So I think the first and most obvious one is top performing and underperforming ad creative. So just sharing with the client, hey, what are your top performing ads and what are your lowest performing ads? And I have links to each of these in here. I've already got them loaded because I figured it would be a little bit easier. So you can see, you can change the date range, 30-day, 7-day. You can see the top performing ads, organized by leads, ROAS, what have you. But I think the big opportunity that we are missing a little bit right now is really breaking it down and getting a little bit more granular. The beautiful thing about Motion is it makes those top performing creatives, instead of spending 20 minutes pulling the data from Meta, organizing it into a spreadsheet, and then, doing pivot tables, whatever you need to do to get that information, we can do it in seconds. So what that really allows us to do is to take that time we were using on manual data collection and shift that over into finding new, more helpful insights that can really drive our creative strategies for clients based on the data that we're seeing in platform, based on what we've already got going. So have a few different things here that I definitely recommend taking a look at, getting in your regular reporting. So breaking down performance by format, that is pretty straightforward. I think we do that most of the time. One thing I think that we have maybe the biggest opportunity here is breaking down performance by creative elements. So our hooks obviously are already named in there. We should all have a hook performance report already in there. But, is it we're testing an ad with 2 different colors? Do we have different creators? Are there different products? All of those things are things that, again, we can analyze within seconds on motion that would have taken, much more time in the past. So make sure in your naming structures, if you are working with specific creators, if you do have specific products, let's be sure we're sharing those insights and letting those insights drive our recommendations to the client. So if we're finding that creatives for our foundation or our serum or something like that are really performing a lot better, we should be able to show that to them and make recommendations. Okay, let's lean more into this. Or your other product is your hero product. How can we branch that gap to make your hero product creatives perform the same as the other ones? So is it the hook? Is it the color? Is it the creator? Let's get really granular there. You can also go ahead and look at engagement metrics, which can help you figure out which are the assets that are grabbing people's attention. Another one that I think is maybe a little underutilized currently is looking at creative fatigue. So let me see if I can find which of these lovely tabs is our creative fatigue. So I just pulled one, but you can see over time how much is our cost per click going up per asset. So which ones are starting to fatigue, getting a little bit more expensive. So we can unclick, look at individual ones, and I'm not saying that any of these fatigued, but you can go ahead and look and see okay, of everything we've got going on, which ones are fatiguing. So this could be really helpful for minimal animal, maybe getting ahead of, we see really, really strong performance as it gets launched, but then all of a sudden it's performing and we're putting all of our budget behind that. If we're looking at some of these engagement metrics, seeing it start to fatigue before we see it actually translate over to no longer generating purchases, that can allow us to be a lot more efficient with our ad spend and which creatives we are putting our spend behind. Another one is audience level creative preferences. I know that Face Reality does a good job about this, really analyzing each level of audience and which creatives are being most impactful in each of those. And then also A/B testing. So I think being really intentional about tests, and I know there are some that we've recommended and just haven't gotten creatives for, but if we're recommending a test, let's make sure we're giving really clear reporting. For example, for Marco, we had basically a conversation of what is the difference of having text overlay versus just a clean, plain image, and also a text overlay with a logo, just the logo and no text. And what we were able to do is by adding that into our naming conventions is we were able to show them very clearly, all right, we want to make sure that we are including a logo, and this is over a long period of time. So it might have been something that changed, we were giving real-time updates, but being able to tell them hey, let's make sure we're having copy on top of our assets. Let's make sure we're not. Let's make sure there's a logo on every single asset, which is making really, really clear reporting on the creative tests that we're recommending. So those are some of the insights. Are there any insights that reporting insights that I missed that you guys have found in your time with motion? No? Okay, cool. That means I was thorough. I love that. So how can we utilize these insights in the creative briefs? I know that's been a big conversation with us, and all of our reporting is how are we connecting that to our next steps and giving really clear communication to client based off of the data. So here, again, data-backed recommendations on what creative elements drive the best ROAS. So obviously seeing the top performing creatives and making connections between what do those creatives have in common. Being able to utilize our, like we talked about, the creative type. So which one's better? Image, video, where could we spend more? Where do we need more iterations? Top performing hooks and call to actions. And same with colors, text usage, imagery that resonates most. And then again, this is all to really inform that creative brief and let them know this is what we want to be working on. So for example, I have a client who bronzer typically isn't one of their top performing products. However, they're having really, really high product or really high performance on those bronzer assets. So I go ahead and dig into that. Well, turns out they're only using one hook, which is one of our top performing hooks with those bronzer assets. It's a third-party credibility hook. So what we're going to recommend then is, okay, like we don't want to lean into bronzer as much, but we're seeing really strong performance with bronzer. Let's go ahead and take that hook type. So let's go ahead and make that third-party credibility hook in our top performing product, our lipstick, and see if that translates over as it should based on the data that we've been provided and found through motion. And how can we utilize motion's insights and optimizations? I think this is a really big opportunity for us in getting into motion daily or at least weekly to influence what we're doing, again, with pausing down, with shifting budgets, with moving something into a winning campaign. Motion can really help us streamline that process. So one of the coolest ones is actually their launch analysis. So this is also something we can share with a client, but I think our really big opportunity here is internally, again, to make sure that we are supporting the creatives that are having the highest performance. So here you will set a goal. Our cost per lead, right now we're seeing like a $45 is a good cost per lead. So I want to make sure that we are at least getting lower than a $45 cost per lead. And based on the budget that we have, when I would consider this scaled to where it has enough data that I can say that this really is a winning asset and it didn't just like have a bunch of purchases at a really low cost, is I want to make sure it gets to $250. These are things you can change. They don't recommend changing this spend goal, so be really conscious when you do set that to make sure that it's going to be accurate pretty much account wide. So here, this is for one of our B2B aesthetic clients, is we can see in the last month, we have launched 6 new creatives. How are they performing? Let's just take like one look. Okay, so far we have 2 that have under a $45 cost per lead and have spent our minimum threshold. So that would be a winner where it's scaled and spent the minimum threshold here. So we know these are winning assets. These have the amount of data we need and the level of performance we need to be able to say like, yes, these are good. Let's iterate on these. And also let's make sure that we are allowing these enough budget to perform. Here we can see some that maybe scaled. They spent up to $250. There's a couple of these, they're not really hitting the cost per lead we want to see. Maybe it's time to pause those down and get some new ones in the mix. So this can really help us streamline that instead of, going through in Meta, like piece by piece. This gives you like right off the bat, okay, which ones are scaling, which ones are winning, where do we have opportunity to make those changes really swiftly as a team? Because I think that is one thing that is unique about us is we are very much in daily making sure that we are making optimizations as quickly as possible. So this is a great tool to allow us to do that. Again, we talked about the creative fatigue. So I think that's, again, something that's really beneficial to us internally to be able to see how it's trending day over day. If it's getting more expensive per click, that we could probably anticipate that it's going to see a drop off in conversion performance as well as it starts to experience creative fatigue. So really recommend when you are in doing your Meta or your TikTok health checks, jump in motion, take a look at motion to see what's going on. Make sure that we're being really on top of this rather than being reactive. I think this gives us the opportunity to be proactive in our creative optimizations. Again, we can adjust ad placements or formats based off of performance trends, just messaging and elements, and then again, gives us opportunity to recommend A/B tests or implement A/B tests with creatives we already have available. So next, this is looking kind of more at the competitor analysis. How do motion boards work? They are a visual dashboard to organize, analyze, and compare ad creatives. And it allows us to tag, categorize, and filter creatives by performance metrics as we're looking at our competitors. So that's not what I'm looking for. Here we go. So right now, what I have here is our brand intel board. So this is basically where we've collected all of our clients. Every competitor is all in one place. So this is everybody we're basically following. This is our feed. When we're looking for specific clients to make recommendations based off of competitors, really recommend you come through here and select their individual competitors, or you can come in here, and this isn't like the best right now. So you can see it says there's nobody there for beauty. That's just not true. That's a lot of our clients. So I would recommend right now, until that's improved, to go ahead and utilize this. So like if we are looking at like a swimwear brand, we would go ahead and select those. This gives us the option, maybe we're looking for specifically new carousels. They had a carousel work really well, and we want to give them some creative inspiration for a new carousel. Status, maybe it's like something that we want to make sure is like really relevant. So again, thinking about swimwear, like what are people doing for spring break right now? That would be where we'd want to look at something active. But what's probably the most helpful here is the active time. So if someone has been running an asset or ever ran an asset for more than 12 months, which these specific companies haven't, that means it's probably a really good asset. So again, these maybe aren't the best examples. So let's just look at everybody. So what has been running for a long time, like these videos ran for 397 days. There's no way you're going to let a video run for 397 days unless it's a really strong video. So that's where we can kind of look what has been successful for our competitors and how can we apply that to our clients. So a lot of really great opportunity there. And how can we use this in creative briefs? So obviously we have individual boards for every single one of our clients where we are personally going in, tailor making them a board of their competitor creatives that we think are going to be beneficial for them to iterate on or be inspired by. So that is one way, but internally, we can also use it to be a little bit more efficient in some of those recommendations. So again, maybe I had a client who had a third-party credibility asset perform really well, and I want them to iterate on it, but I want to see different ways that you can iterate on that third-party credibility. What I've actually done is I've made boards for each of our hooks where we can go ahead and just drop any inspiration. So like not all of these are fully filled out, but like, again, if someone needs like some inspiration on outcome, it'll just make us a lot more efficient in being able to be like, okay, like what does a storytelling asset look like and how can we help them implement that? We have that right there. So you guys can go ahead and take that and apply that to your creative recommendations. And of course, I recommend for you guys to help fill these in too, because I think, again, it's just going to make us more efficient as a team instead of me like digging through trying to find an us versus them, which is sometimes a hard asset to find. If I just can pop in here and see like 5 different versions of it and say, oh, this would be the one that would be best for them, that's going to make us way more efficient in doing our creative briefs. So definitely recommend you guys utilizing and helping build into these. Yay! So that is motion.